When I think about my son, I think about his big heart, how kind he was, just being there for everybody. Look, I am your brother. We need to stop the conflict with all this violence. Let's come together as a people. If you know something, just tell somebody. Our lives do matter.
And welcome to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Greg Merriweather, and it's good to be back again, talking to you and bringing you the best of all the news that goes on around the Indianapolis area in the community every single week. And today we have a special guest in the building, and that guest is Pastor Charles Harrison. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good.
For those of you who don't know Pastor Charles Harrison, he is the pastor of Barnes United Methodist Church and also the president of the 10 Point Coalition. It's good to have you here, man. It's been a while. We kind of hit and miss on Twitter every now and again, but it's good to see you face to face, man. How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. I'm really doing good, and some exciting times in my life right now.
Absolutely, man. I've been seeing a lot of stuff going on with you, a lot of stuff going on with 10 Point, and I just want to start by saying congratulations, because I think the accolades and the things that you all have been receiving are just phenomenal. And I just think that, it's awesome to see the work that you all have been doing in the community. So I just want to commend you on that first.
Well, thank you so much.
And so, with 10 Point, there have been some things going on. You just had not even a conference, I want to say a luncheon. Yes. A luncheon maybe a week or so ago, and Vice President Pence was in the building.
Right.
I want to just start by asking you, what made you all get Vice President Pence to come?
Well, it really goes back to when Vice President Pence was the governor of Indiana, and we started having conversations. I've been knowing, Vice President Pence for a long time, and we have developed a relationship over the years. And when he was the governor, we were having conversations at that point about how do we combat and address the issue of youth urban gun violence. And we wanted at that time to take it to the state level and to begin to address the problems we're having in many cities across the state. When he became the vice president, then it changed, and we began to think on the national level. How can we start having a real serious conversation about this whole problem of urban gun violence, particularly as it impacts men of color. Almost half the homicides every year in this country are black people, and we only make up about 13% of the population. So how can we begin to have a real conversation about what are the root causes, what are some solutions as we look at other successful models across the country. So when we began to think about that, we said, well, let's bring the vice president in, understanding that there would be some controversy with that, but we felt like in the long run, it could begin a national conversation, which we felt was missing. We don't talk about this issue, I think, like we should when we're losing about 14 young men of color every 24 hours.
So with that being said, just kind of jumping on the controversial part of it, what has been the most controversial piece of it? What has been transposed or put towards you all, being that, Vice President Pence was here? What are some of the things that have come out since he's been here?
Well, the struggle that we have as an organization trying to be apolitical is whatever the issues that are going on nationally, particularly with Republicans, with the president, President Trump, and some of the positions that President Trump and Vice President Pence has taken, those issues become issues that we have to address as 10 Point with certain, elements in the black community. When they feel like somehow we have betrayed the community, by having a Republican vice president, come to our banquet, that somehow we're going against the values of our community, that we're supporting the policies of the Trump administration, and that's just not true. Our focus is on the issue of youth urban gun violence. That's our focus. We're not into people's political positions. When we had Congressman Andre Carson, he had made some statements that were controversial when we had him as a speaker at our breakfast several years ago, and people were pushing back against us for having Congressman Carson, and we try to stay out of that. We invite people who support this issue of addressing youth urban gun violence.
When you say support, one of the things that I have faced being in the community is the support piece. Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that, you know, again, when you select someone to come, it's full support? How do you explain that? How do you go about explaining that to people who don't understand that there's a struggle getting support somewhat from your own people? Let me be honest on that. And so how do you go about explaining that to the people when you're like, look, we want to do well, we want to do good in the community, but when we ask the community for support, it's sort of minimal as it comes to financial. Let me just be real, financial support. So this was deemed a fundraiser, am I correct?
Yes, that's true.
So can you kind of just explain this? Because I think that people thought that some people looked at it as if it was not a fundraiser. They looked at it as if this was an event that should have been available to the community. They were like, the cost, you know, this thing that came out $250 a plate, people in the community can't afford it, so on and so forth. How do you go about addressing that and saying this was a fundraiser, and let's address also the other piece on, now that the funds have been raised, what's the plan with 10 Point?
Well, this one was different from what we normally do. When we have the prayer breakfast, normally our focus has been to invite the community to be a part of that. So a lot of times you have churches and small businesses, sometimes individuals, and the price to get in has been minimal. This time it was not just a fundraiser, but we wanted to get the corporate community engaged in this whole issue of youth urban gun violence, and not just to know about it, but how could they be a part of, one, solutions, because one of the issues that we face is the whole issue of jobs, particularly for ex-offenders and at-risk youth. And the second piece, financial support for this initiative that has been successful in now 4 neighborhoods on the west side in a zip code that historically has been the second highest homicide zip code in the city. So that's what the purpose was. We have had a difficult time raising money over the years, you know, particularly as we have tried to do fundraisers in our community, and it has not allowed us to provide the kind of support that a lot of neighborhoods across the city are asking for. You know, we're in 4 neighborhoods, but there's probably 14 other neighborhoods that are asking for our help. So a part of what we're trying to do with the money that we raised at the luncheon is to expand in 1 and possibly 2 neighborhoods on the east side. So we have identified those. So we want to use the same formula that has been successful on the west side and began to take that to another neighborhood on the east side.
Oh, that's nice. He's answering the questions. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is just really get the information out there so that you all can know better. We're trying to have a better informed community. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue with the Expo show.
That was his song. It's moments like that that make me remember how he constantly talked and laughed, and how he loved everyone and had a love for the community. That's why it hurts that when my son was murdered, no one stepped up to say anything. Imagine it was your father, your brother, your uncle, your cousin, your friend. Wouldn't you want to know? God answers prayers, and I pray that someone would do the right thing. I am your sister.
And welcome back to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Greg Merriweather, and today's guest is Pastor Charles Harrison of Barnes United Methodist and also the president of 10 Point Coalition. So, Pastor Harrison, one of the things that we've heard in the community that has been, just really something humongous is your stance on stop and frisk at one point. Can you explain to us what it is that you had said and how you feel about stop and frisk today?
Well, I had, probably it's been a couple years ago, I had a chance to visit James McDuffie, who was convicted of a murder on Keystone. He was a part of the murder that took place. There was a second person in the studio that they thought was dead, but he wasn't dead. He ended up running and getting help. So James McDuffie asked me to come and see him, and I had a chance to go visit with him and had a chance to see some other inmates, young people. And there he was, sentenced to 184 years in prison, a young man, and he said to me, Reverend Harrison, I feel like a zombie. He said, I wish somebody could have got to me at a younger age. And he said, a lot of young people in here who are serving life prison sentences feel the same way. So I happened to be at a meeting that was held by the police chief of Indianapolis, and the city was experiencing a large number of homicides. We were in the trauma months, June, July, get ready to go into August, and I made a comment, and one of the things that was frustrating to me is I felt like when it came to the black-on-black violence, then there was silence in the black community, and I didn't see any outrage or the community really doing a whole lot. And the comment I made, I would rather for us to do stop and frisk than to do nothing, and the community, particularly the OGs, got the comment. They got the comment. Within 48 hours, OGs were calling me up and saying, listen, Reverend, this is what we think needs to be done. And from that, we came up with the initiative that we're now, using in Butler, Tarkington, Crown Hill, and Unwah. They wanted to take more of a leading role. Some people took it as if I was endorsing stop and frisk. I just made the comment that I would prefer us to do something than to do nothing, and I felt like at that time we were doing nothing.
So with the knowledge of what stop and frisk is it fair to say that that is not your stance today?
No, what I believe works effectively is what we're doing with 10 Point. I believe that any effective crime prevention strategy has to be from the bottom up, has to be grassroots, community driven, rather than top down, which is more a police driven strategy. Those strategies, over the last, 3 or 4 decades haven't been effective at all. But I believe this grassroots strategy is the most effective. And, you look at what we have done as an organization, 10 Point, in one of the top homicide areas of the city, we have proven that strategy can be effective.
When we talk about 10 Point, there's a group. It's a nice sized group of ministers, right?
Yes.
What does it feel like when you're the face of this, and there's so much that's coming out, but it's all generally directed at you? How does that feel?
Some days that's difficult. Some days it's very difficult. It has gotten better over the years, but when you are the face of the organization, you get the praise, which is not always deserving, but you also catch the heat, and that's tough. But you have to really stay focused on the mission. I do this because I'm passionate about it, because my family was affected by this violence. I lost a brother at the age of 21. His son was only a baby at the time. My brother's son, Juwan, ended up dying the same way his father did at the age of 23. And then I had a sister who spent over 20 years in and out of prison for being involved in drug activity. So when people ask the question, I know what it feels like to be on the other side of the tape. I know what it feels like to be a family member that has to go to a homicide scene and there your loved one is lying on the street. I know what those families feel like when they're wanting justice, and it doesn't seem like the police care and the case goes unsolved. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to have a family member spend years in prison, you know, that's caught up, you know, in the game on the street in my sister. So that's what keeps me going. I don't want any other family to have to experience what my family has had to experience 3 times.
That's interesting because, you know, I'll be honest, I've been a person who was at one point in time very hard on the 10-point coalition, very hard on the 10-point coalition. I think that one of the things that I have struggled with is the fact that you never really get to know, you know, about one's passion. You never really understand the person. And also in the community, when it's like everybody's upset, it's kind of infectious. And all of a sudden we just chime in and believe it, and we never take the time to figure out why. And I never knew. I knew a portion of that about you, but never knew all those things about you. I think it's important for us to know that what makes you go, what makes you tick. Because I think that then we can look at things from a different light, because there's something that is driving Pastor Charles Harrison as opposed to it just always looking like he's just there. You know, so I thank you for sharing that part of your life with us right now. On the other side of that, you know, I've just seen an article. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but maybe you've heard about it, where someone kind of wrote some negative things about, you know, you and comparing you to a young man who was involved in the street life and saying that you were more so the most dangerous person in Indianapolis. When you hear those things, as a family man, as a pastor, as a man in general, how does that make you feel?
Well, certainly, you know, to say that it doesn't affect you it would not be honest. That it does affect you when you're trying to do good and you're trying to make life better for people in the community, and to hear those kind of words, it hurts. It hurts. But again, you cannot allow it to stop you from doing what you believe is your call. And I truly believe that this is a call on my life by God. Now, I didn't always believe that, but things have happened over the year that I believe that God is guiding and directing my path. And sometimes I have to say things that are uncomfortable for people to hear, but they need to be said for us to begin the conversation. I didn't end up dying like my brother did or my nephew, but I was on the edge. I almost fell off the cliff too, you know, and I know what it feels like to be hopeless. Yeah. I know what it feels like not to see a future. So I come from that perspective too. So if I can save a Charles Harrison out there, some young person that is on the cliff and their life can go in either direction, and if I can be a part of saving that person and putting them on a path of success, then I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna block out the noise. And I've gotten better at blocking out the noise and staying focused. Because everybody really, you know, sometimes, you know, people speak out of anger, people speak out of, you know, lack of knowledge about, you know, about one's, you know, real purpose and mission in life, and you block it out. You know, I believe that I gotta live what I preach. And Jesus said, love your enemy, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. And I try to live that out.
Absolutely. There it is. We're listening to Pastor Charles Harrison, and you are watching the Expo Show. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Robert Mathis. I spent 14 years playing for your Indianapolis Colts. During that time, I noticed a lot of violence in what has become my city as well. Our most precious resource is being lost at a rapid rate. That resource is our future, better known as our children. I'm here to tell you that I love you. I love the city. I'm Indy, Indy is me. Please, please stop the violence. I'm Robert Mathis, and I am your brother.
And welcome back to the Expo Show. I'm your host, Greg Merriweather, and we are sitting here with Pastor Charles Harrison, president of the 10-Point Coalition and pastor of Barnes United Methodist Church. And this has been a very interesting conversation, brother. You kind of opened up today, man. I'm really excited about that. So, you had the Attorney General, the State Attorney General, give a $500,000 pledge, per se,
yes,
to expand 10-Point Coalition. And then there have been numerous groups who have donated towards 10-Point Coalition. One of the biggest questions in the community is, where does the money go? They're like, where's all the money going? Did I just use a street voice? Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of the questions. And I just really want that to be clear because, that's been one of the biggest questions that people ask. They're like, what happens with the money?
Well, for the $500,000 from the State Attorney General, we're looking to establish 10 points across the state, particularly in some of the areas of the state that has seen the highest level of youth violence. We have identified at least 6, 7 cities, from Gary, South Bend, Fort Wayne, Muncie, Kokomo, Evansville, and East Chicago has made a phone call. So the goal is to establish local 10-point coalitions using local people, local leaders, whether they be clergy or community leaders, and basically give them the formula that we use in Indianapolis to replicate the model. Most of the money that we use here goes toward stipends for volunteers. People are making a commitment who are passionate about, being peacekeepers. Most of them work their 8-hour jobs. They come home, grab a bite to eat, then they go out for 2 or 3 hours each night, and we just give them a little stipend, to say thank you for what they do. And what it has helped us do is get the same people out 4 or 5 nights a week. So my wife is more likely to let me go out if there's a little cash tied to it, so she knows I'm really doing something. And we have found that has been successful. When we did the volunteering without tying a finance to it, we really didn't get people coming out consistently. They maybe would do it once a week, maybe, but we found that most people only did it once a month. So, we learned from other groups across the country, and this has been very effective as how we do it. And basically the rest of it to run the day-to-day operations of it.
So what are the other things that 10-Point is involved in that people may not know about? I know that there's an employment part.
Yes, there's an employment part.
So can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, part of what we use to get people to put down their guns and selling drugs is to provide them job opportunities. So we have partnered with a lot of different businesses that we have advocated for them to give particularly returning citizens an opportunity. Most of the guys and the women out there who have served time in prison feel like they come out of prison, they come back home, and the doors of opportunity are closed, and they feel like the mark of Cain is on them. So we have been advocating to businesses to give them an opportunity. We're very selective as to who we may recommend to work at a particular business. Some are not ready to work, so we need to make sure they're ready to work, and we will take them through an existing job training program. Some may have a substance abuse issue, so we need to get them help when it comes to their substance abuse before we send them to a job and make sure they're job ready. So we have a lot of different businesses. One of the main ones is Reese Welding right at 37th and Illinois. They have been phenomenal. They have hired 30 plus people. And they're starting out at $14 an hour, teaching them how to be welders. Once they get their card, they can make up to $45 an hour. And they started a 3rd shift because of us, the number of people we have recommended. So that's just been phenomenal. And what we're doing with FedEx, Penske Logistics, just a lot of great businesses.
So Pastor, when you say these things, it just kind of makes me wonder why it's been quiet. Why have you been quiet with this great information? Because I think that there's a part of the community that just wants to know. So is there a reason why, or is it maybe you're just busy and you don't get these avenues and where people may ask these questions? What is it that you feel, maybe that area of not being able to tell the story the way it should be told?
Well, part of the issue is, we made some assumptions that, we were telling the story through the various, news reports about 10 Point. And maybe we weren't as more intentional about, sharing the story like I have today. Because I had someone say that to me yesterday, that we needed to share the story more, and particularly my personal life. So, we thought we were, but there seems to be people who still don't really, understand what 10 Point does. And maybe we need to do a better job at that.
So how did you all come to be connected with Expo? I know that, it's been put out there that there was a connection with the Black Expo as it related to the event that you all just recently have. How did that work out?
Well, how we originally became connected to Expo is our work with Expo for years now with the, Circle City Classic and Indiana Black Expo. We have, been a part of that for years. Now working with Tanya and the Expo staff and board. With this piece, I reached out to Tanya because we were doing a luncheon at a magnitude that we hadn't done before, and I knew Tanya and some of the other people that we reached out to brought some expertise that we didn't have to do something of this magnitude.
Okay. That's clear. I get that because they are used to having large things going on. So it would seem like the right person to definitely get to help you out in that area. So Pastor Harrison, what is it that we should look forward to from the 10 Point Coalition in the future?
Well, what we hope to do is several things. We're not only going to be expanding statewide, but we're going to be expanding regionally. We're going to start a 10 Point in Cleveland, Ohio. Louisville, Kentucky, and next month I will be in Nashville, Tennessee for 2 days. That city has seen a 65% increase in non-fatal shootings and homicides. So we're working with the national office of the National 10 Point Coalition, looking at in what ways we could be, helpful in expanding the 10 Point model on a national basis along with the national office.
Excellent. So you've heard it here. Pastor Charles Harrison has sat down on the couch here at the Expo show, had a great conversation with me, and I'm just excited to see what it is that they are going to be doing in the future. I'd like to extend my hand and wish you the best, Pastor. We're going to keep bringing it every single week right here on the Expo show. Have a great one.